Hello friends, today we're going to talk about the expenses of a non-operating company in Montenegro. We're talking about monthly expenses. You've opened a company and obtained the residence permit. So what expenses will you have? Essentially, the expenses consist of just two components. The first is the cost of accounting services. And the second is taxes and the director's salary. The company has a director. Since there is a director, there is a salary. And since there is a salary, certain taxes must be paid on. So what are these expenses? First, I'll start with taxes and the director's salary. There are two options, the correct one and the incorrect one, which people use all the time. What is the correct option? When you submit documents for a residence permit, you provide a single document in which you specify all the details about your company and your future work. In other words, what the company will do, that the company with such and such a name has been opened with such and such a main activity located at such and such an address, that this company employs a certain director and that this director will receive a certain salary. Moreover, every MUP has certain requirements for the minimum salary. These requirements can vary from one MUP to another. For example, in Herceg-Novi, they require you to state the minimum wage. At the moment, this is 450 euros, while in Tivat, they require you to state 750 euros plus an additional payment for each family member, if you have a family, and so on. In other words, each MUP has its own requirements, starting from 450 euros regardless of the number of family members and going higher. It should be noted that compared to other countries, the requirements are quite lenient, but they do exist nonetheless. So, what about taxes? The salary is 450 euros. If you do everything correctly, that is, you declare to the MUP that you will be receiving a certain salary, and then you actually receive that salary. The taxes are about 120 euros, maybe a few euros less. However, at present, there is no connection between the MUP and the Montenegrin tax authorities. So people often take advantage of this. In other words, the MUPs don't actually know what salary you are really paying. So you tell them that you will be paying 450 euros and they basically take your word for it. They don't check it in any way after that. Maybe this situation will continue for many more years, or maybe someday there will be a connection between the MUP and the tax authorities. So we're not trying to get on anyone's nerves or force our point of view on anyone, but we do recommend doing everything the right way. In other words, if you declare that your salary would be a certain amount, it's better to actually pay that amount. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide. The second bonus, aside from the fact that you're guaranteed not to have any problems and that you're an honest person not breaking any laws in a country that's still foreign to you, is this. The second bonus is that if you pay the full minimum salary, that is, you're officially employed at a full rate and pay the full salary, then you gain the right to a pension. I have a detailed video on how to get a pension in Montenegro. It was filmed many years ago, but basically nothing has become outdated there. It's still relevant today. In short, in order to receive a pension, you need to obtain permanent residency, which you will of course get in the future. Well, at least permanent residence, maybe even citizenship, but permanent residency is already enough. You need to have worked in Montenegro for at least 15 years at a full rate. That's it. So if you get a full-time job, then accordingly fulfilling all the other requirements is basically not that difficult. However, Russians know how well, probably not just Russians, let's say foreigners in general often take advantage of the lack of communication between the MUP and the tax office to deceive the MUP. That is, you declare to the MUP that you will be working full-time, but in reality, after getting your residence permit, you go and switch to part-time at the tax office, most often to a quarter-time position, and pay yourself a salary that's 4 times lower. If your salary is 4 times lower, then the tax on it is also 4 times less. That comes out to about 30 euros. Well, I won't get into the exact cents right now, let's round it off a bit. Give or take a euro here or there won't make much of a difference for you. So it turns out that the taxes for a non-operating company range from 30 to 120 euros, depending on the workload you declare. In other words, whether you choose the correct option or the wrong one, which could someday lead to some unpleasant consequences for you, or maybe not. If it does lead to consequences, the fines are quite substantial, and there could be other problems as well. That's why I advise everyone to declare at the full rate, It's not much more expensive, but it's more reliable and secure. So, in short, I don't see the point in risking it just to save 90 euros a month. It's not worth the chance of ending up with a major headache. I think the tax issue is clear now. Now, the second question, the cost of accounting services. The cost of accounting services is currently increasing. This is because, well, prices in the country have risen significantly. Not only in Montenegro, in fact, prices have gone up all over the world, and in Montenegro you can really feel it. Costs have skyrocketed, including business expenses and, of course, accounting fees. Most likely, I think prices are heading toward everyone charging around 100 euros per month for servicing a non-operating company plus VAT. But at the moment, there's a bit of a range since everyone has raised their prices, but each has done so differently. After some time, I think that will be at the beginning of next summer, maybe the end of spring or the start of next summer, prices will even out and be roughly the same everywhere. At the moment, there's a range from low to high. For most agencies, prices are from 75 to 100 euros plus VAT. VAT in Montenegro is 21%. Accordingly, the question arises, what will this cost plus VAT amount to? Let's look at the image on the screen. If you contact a company where the cost of accounting services is 75 euros, then let's look at this screenshot. 75 plus 21% VAT is 91 euros. Or if you contact a company where the cost of accounting services is 100 euros per month plus VAT, then look at the second screenshot. 100 euros plus 21% is 121 euros. Why do I always say the cost plus VAT? Because in Montenegro, you become a VAT payer if you receive more than 30,000 euros in revenue during the year. That's it. It's not such a huge amount of money, and practically all accounting agencies go over this limit. So, well, I don't know a single accounting agency that isn't a VAT payer. Maybe only some startup that just began operating yesterday, they have 10 companies as clients, and of course they aren't paying VAT yet. Everyone who has been in business for a while is a VAT payer. So the service fee is plus VAT. Is that a lot or a little? I just mentioned that the price basically starts from, well, from 121 euros, that's the minimum. And let me load up the calculator and figure it out. 121 for VAT plus 120 for taxes and up to 241 euros. So basically, is that a lot or a little? For comparison, 11 years ago, when I came to Montenegro, we paid accountants 100 euros plus 21% for a non-operating company. That is 100, back then VAT was 17%. 100 euros plus 17% VAT, that's 117 euros. And 130 euros in taxes on the director's salary, total 247 euros. So 11 years ago, even though at that time the purchasing power of the euro was completely different from now, much higher, you could buy much more with that euro. The cost of expenses for a non-operating company in Montenegro was higher than it is today. Well, friends, that's all I wanted to say. I hope this video was helpful. My name is Dimitri. You can contact me with questions about immigration or about life in the country. Goodbye, everyone.